fellow Planeswalkers.
I'm James.
And I'm Paul.
And you're listening to the newest episode of the Commander-at-Arms podcast. This week on the podcast, we are giving our top 10 picks for cards from Adventures in the Forgotten Realms main set and the Commander decks that we haven't seen talked about much that may deserve a little bit more love. But before we do that, we have our upkeep trigger to do. And we're going to start this off by thanking all of our patrons. We want to thank everybody. You help us get the lights on here in the studios, help us create content for your ears and your eyes. We love it. And if you want to become a supporter of the channel and you want to become a patron, go to patreon.com/commanderatarms and check out our tiers there where you can, get a shout out. You can come play Magic with us, and everyone gets access to the Discord server. All links will be in the show notes below or in the video description below. Next up, we have Mail Day and interesting finds. Dun dun dun. Paul, you bought anything spicy lately?
Just a little bit of salsa from the supermarket.
That's pretty damn spicy. Or it's not that spicy, depending on your spice level.
In all honesty, no, I haven't bought anything magic related. Although we did actually get a couple of magic related souvenirs from a friend of ours that recently went to Pennsylvania.
We did.
He got us some sleeves and like a gift card, just basically as a a little token of him being there from all the way in Pennsylvania. So that's a cool little thing to have. Thanks to him for that.
Yeah, I mean, I still need to find a deck to sleeve that up in. Haven't figured out which deck it's going to be yet, but it's going to be something fun. I can see it now.
Yeah, I know exactly what deck I'm going to sleeve up in those sleeves.
Actually, what I think I'm going to sleeve up in that deck? It's going to be the Nihilor deck, and we just did a deck tech on that one on the YouTube channel. So go and check that out as well. We did Nihilor from the Esper Dungeons of Death deck, which was the Sephirus of the Hidden Ways commander deck. That's over on YouTube. Don't forget to like that video, share it, subscribe, hit the notification bell thingy, leave a comment, do everything that you're supposed to do on YouTube over there. If you're watching this on YouTube, like this video as well, hit the notification bell, sub to the channel, and yeah, put our names out everywhere you can.
This deck tech was a little bit of a weird process because basically I started it. I made like a general shell, and then James was like, "Hey, I saw you were working on this," and I was like, "Yeah, just take it over." So we kind of both worked on it, but like at very separate times, which is not traditionally how we do things. Usually it's either one of us or both of us.
Yeah, both. Normally we both sit down either in the same room or over Discord, and we kind of just theorize the commander and what I normally just sit here and be like, "Oh, what about this card?" And you're like, "Whoa, what about this card?" And I go, "Oh, that's fancy." Or it's like, "I want this kind of effect," and you go, "That's going to be XYZ card." I'm like, "Done, add it." I came through and I just kind of fleshed it out a little bit, adding some things that I think Paul didn't really miss, but just hadn't gotten to at the point where he stopped editing the deck, which was like some of the ramp and some of the card draw things and a little bit of removal. But other than that, like, it was pretty much done. I only needed to add like 4 or 5 cards to the deck.
Yeah. Honestly, Nihilor is one of the more interesting cards, I think, from these commander decks. And in fact, I would argue that probably all of the monster commanders, with the exception of the red-green deck, are more interesting than their hero or, adventurer counterparts.
Yeah, I actually agree.
Maybe
on
that's
that
just
one.
me.
And that's a good little segue into our play of the week, Paul.
Yeah. As for the play of the week this week, it's going to be a little different. It's not really so much a play as it is a whole game, I guess. I sleeved up all 4 of the Adventures in the Forgotten Realm pre-con decks. I brought them to my LGS, where James and our friend Ross and his significant other met us there. And we jammed a 4-person game using all the pre-cons. And I guess just to give a quick review of the experience, these decks are like surprisingly control-y for precons. Like, there were, I want to say 4, maybe 5 board wipes in the whole game, and I've never had a precon. We didn't even finish that game.
Nope.
I remember James looked at his phone. He was like, "Oh, we got like 3 hours to play this game," and so we started. And we didn't even finish. Literally,
Yeah,
not one person was knocked out of the game.
Yeah, I mean, we got to the store at like 4 o'clock, and that's the usual time we normally get to the store on a Thursday. We got there at 4 o'clock, hung out, we played a game, versing one of the patrons there, and yeah, pretty much, got slammed through that game, and then we were all kind of like, we're a little peckish, so we went and got some food and came back, and then that's when Ross's significant other Melinda came over, and she was off work and drove over and met us there, and we played some Commander, and I was like, yeah, 3 hours is totally long enough to play precons. Like, it has to be, right? Like, I know precons aren't the strongest of decks. They're a little dirtily sometimes, but usually 3 hours is a good time to be able to get a game in. Yeah, nah. So we all rolled to see like what decks we got, and we got to do one switcheroo. So I ended up with the Bant deck. Paul, you got the Rakdos Prosper deck.
Mm-hmm.
And then Melinda got the Garul Dragons deck. And Ross got the last deck, which was the Esper Sephirus of the Hidden Ways deck. And I mean, I had fun. Like, don't get me wrong. I had a lot of fun playing this product. I don't think I got off the ground as fast or as quickly as I would have liked to. And I'm also I'm very good at playing Bant colored decks, but I'm not very good at playing Voltron. And that's what the style of the deck was, it was Voltron. I think I literally got out one good attack on you, Paul. And that was when it was like start of the game. I cast out Holy Avenger. No, it was like turn 1, Utopia Sprawl, so I could tap it for white because it was literally the only color in my hand that I was missing. And then by like turn 3, I had Holy Avenger on the field, played my commander, played Holy Avenger, got around 1 turn, swung at you, dealt double damage, dealt 8 commander damage, and then after that, it was just all downhill there from me. So
yeah, then I killed it.
You killed it. I tried to amass some sort of board state. Every time I would amass a board state, some sort of board wipe would come out. Like, Melinda even consulted me. She's like, hey, I've got this board wipe. And I was like, she's like, I don't want to mess you over because I see you struggling, but look at Paul. And I'm like, for the greater good, I'll sacrifice my board state for that.
Yeah, and honestly, I want to say I had a good board state like 3 or 4 times that game, and every single time it got destroyed.
Yeah, how do you think I felt, mate? My commander cost 10 mana by the end of that game, and I was like, I can cast my commander, and that's it. Like, I couldn't even back it up with, like, any kind of a haste enabler or a sword. Not even, like, a sword, but, like, any kind of equipment. I couldn't do anything. Like, I like, sifted through the deck at the end of the game, and everything else that was spicy or fun or that I thought was good that should go in the deck was in my deck, but I wasn't drawing it.
Well, speaking of the precons and new cards, we are going to mention a few of them in today's episode. Those are going to be later on in main phase 2, though. We're going to start off, though, with some of the cards from the main set, including a couple of uncommons. I'm going to let James, we're going to go with the normal formula here, so to speak, so I'm going to let James take it away from there.
Yeah, so let's get to main phase 1 here. Let's start our very first card off. If anyone here has watched the Feridar Devil's Chosen deck, you possibly might remember this card, but this is You Find Some Prisoners. This is an uncommon from AFC. It is a 1 and a red for an instant that says choose 1. You have Break Their Chains, which is destroy target artifact, or interrogate them. Exile the top 3 cards of target opponent's library. Choose one of them until the end of your next turn. You may play that card, and you may pay mana as though it were mana of any color to cast it.
There are a couple of good parts of this card. First of all, I just want to point out they may as well have called this the set of Paul because there's so many modal cards. But this card in particular, first of all, being able to destroy an artifact at instant speed, even at 2 mana, pretty valuable resource. Artifacts are probably one of the most, if not the most popular card type in Commander. Literally, there's every mana rock, even some more problematic artifacts that you might encounter, like Time Sifter or Ward of Bone, things like that. Any problematic equipment, like Sword of Blah and Blah. You find some prisoners, get rid of it. Done.
I do like
however,
Sword of
it also
Blah and Blah,
answers another unique problem in Commander in a rather unique way. And that is a lot of the tutors that we play in Commander actually take a card from our library and put it on top of the deck, which is basically the whole like Visions tutor cycle, which is Vampiric tutor, Worldly tutor, Mystical tutor, Enlightened tutor, and actually not Gamble. Gamble's the only one that puts it in your hand.
But you have to like get rid of a card, which is 9 times out of 10 you pitch the card you gambled for.
Yeah, I mean, there's also like the knockoffs. Other than there's like Sylvan tutor, there's Imperial seal, not Grim tutor, Cruel tutor. There's a bunch of tutors that put stuff on top of your deck, and you find some prisoners. Basically, you can allow them to resolve that tutor, and then before they even get to like untap, or maybe they do it on their upkeep or something, you get to tap 2 mana and say, hey, whatever card you just got, I want it. And what's cool about this is that a lot of the time people will find like, I don't know, Soul Ring. They might get, I don't know, like a Cavern of Souls. They might get something to protect their commander. They might get some kind of other ramp. I don't know. There's a lot of options. And you find some prisoners basically means that you get to take their most powerful play. Maybe, hopefully, it's a Rhystic Study. And you get to rip it off their deck. They tutored for you. And you get to play it on your next turn. And even if they tutored for something that you can't even use, you get 2 other cards besides that one. You get to pick the one that you play on your next turn.
Yeah,
so
imagine
just a really
like,
cool, unique effect.
Imagine if someone went and tutored for like their combo win, and you went, "Hold on a second, I'm going to interrogate them, and I'm going to find it and just exile it."
Yeah, imagine someone Doomsday piled.
Oh,
And you find some prisoners for them.
Yeah, you interrogate them, and you take what? You can just take one of their Doomsday cards and exile 2 others. That's just an instant loss for the Doomsday player.
Most of the time, I don't know if they have a contingency plan for that. It really depends on how they plan on doing it.
Usually, people don't really expect interaction when they Doomsday. After that one, we have our next card here. I think this was the card that you were most hyped for, Paul, when the set first came out, and it's a card that I haven't even seen played once, and I don't understand why. People were screaming for white to have cards that say draw a card, and like that's what this does. This draws cards. So I should at least announce what the card's called. It's called Flumph. There's 1 and a white for a 0/4 Jellyfish Defender flying that says whenever Flumph is dealt damage, you and target opponent each draw a card.
All right, so besides the name, which obviously the name is awesome, Flumph.
Sounds like a sound effect.
It's 1 and a white for a 0/4 Defender with flying, which, considering how early this comes down, actually blocks a lot of early game threats pretty efficiently. It can even block, I don't know, just about anything in the early game. What I was trying to go for there is that you can use this for like politicking. Say the Geared player wants to get in for a free attack, right? But they don't have a way to protect Geared. You happen to have your Flumph out. Which, don't take that out of context, because that could sound kind of weird. You say to Geared, all right, you can attack me. I'll block on my Flumph, and I'll draw a card, and then I'll let somebody else draw a card. And they say, okay, sure, as long as I get to attack with Geared. And you've just gone up a card. You have good favor with Geared, and if you let somebody that's not Geared draw a card, you just established good favor with 2 players for doing seemingly nothing. And as a matter of fact, you actually went up a card on the exchange.
Yeah, I feel like this is how they're doing white card draw. It's very politic card draw. It's getting favor with the rest of the table card draw. You know, like this is which is weird because this is in the main set of AFR. This isn't really a card you're going to be playing in standard, because why would you want to give your opponent a card for attacking? You know, that's kind of just giving them a little bit extra gas, and you get to draw a card as well. But in Commander, this is such a good card. And this is like, I feel like this is like Mangara levels good in like drawing cards and the way that it kind of draws cards. Because like you said, you politic against there are commanders out there that want to attack, that sometimes there are bad attacks. And if you go, like Paul said, attack me, I'll just block it. And then you've gotten favor with three players at the table, and you've drawn a card as well. It may not be inherently like as efficient as any other card draw spell in the game, but it's definitely the direction that white is going for card draw, is political card draw, which is what I'm coining the term now, Paul. It's political card draw.
It's also important to note that, and this is an aspect of Magic that I feel like has been forgotten, is politics. I feel like a lot of people just play powerful cards and don't really care about the politics aspect of the game. And that's fine and all. But in a pod that still plays with some amount of politicking, Flumph, I think, is kind of like the nuts. I know I'm overhyping a 2-mana 0/4 Defender of Flying, but the amount of favor that you can gain from a single card, literally just by blocking or, well, it taking damage at all, is immense. And sometimes, like, if there's a problematic permanent that somebody else doesn't really have, or that you don't have removal for, but somebody else does, be like, hey, if you have removal in your deck, attack me, I'll block, you can draw a card. And they'll completely ignore the fact that you're drawing a card as well, because you're letting them draw a card.
Yeah, which is the political side of the political card draw. And that's, I think, really important in Commander is, like, people sometimes forget what you've done on your turn, unless you've done something, like, inherently broken or busted or, like, really strong. People are going to kind of forget what you're doing. And if you drawing one card isn't going to, like, you know, affect the rest of the table, I'm sure they'll let you do it. I mean, if you play this in maybe colors that like to draw cards faster, like if you play this in a Bant deck, which I know I talk about Bant a lot, but I mean, if you play this in a Bant deck, maybe it might attract a little bit of extra hate or attention because you've just drawn an extra card, or there are some really good Bant commanders out there. But I mean, yeah, I think it's just a good card. People should be playing it more often. I want to see Flumph at least once in a pod. If you have Flumph in your deck, come play Magic with us, because I want to see you resolve it. After that, we're going to talk about our next card here, Paul, and it is a card that I think for 6 mana does something really cool that I wish they would keep doing this kind of effect. This is True Polymorph, so it is 4 and 2 blue for an instant. It says target artifact or creature becomes a copy of another target artifact or creature.
There are a few different uses for a card like this. Let's say an opponent has played a really cool card draw-y artifact, like a Staff of Nin or a Mind's Eye, and you have this useless mana rock that you don't need anymore. You can turn your mana rock into Mind's Eye, or turn it into Staff of Nin to draw some extra cards. You can turn one of your mana dorks into your opponent's commander. That being said, there's also the nastier side of this card, where you can take your opponent's commander and transform it into a mana rock. And this card, unlike most effects like this, is actually permanent until that creature or artifact leaves the battlefield. So once you transform their commander into a mana rock, it will be a mana rock until it leaves the battlefield somehow. And I'm gonna coin this a silence effect. That's the term that they use in Hearthstone. I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this before, but Magic doesn't really have a term for something like this. But being able to silence somebody's commander, now that the tuck rule is no longer a thing, when it hasn't been for quite some time, is a very irreplaceable and important yet potent effect in a game. Because people love to play. I'm gonna use James's decks as an example again, just because I play with him all the time, so I'm most familiar with his commanders. Commanders like Najeela, Cullen, doesn't really work on Mogus. What's another one? Help me out, James.
No, I mean that's good because I don't have a Mogus deck.
Sorry, I was thinking of the other red-black one.
Kroxa.
Kroxa.
Mogus is going to go in the deck, but yeah, it's still a Kroxa deck at the moment.
Gishath.
Yeah.
Things like that. Like, if you take that commander, of which the deck is obviously built around, and just morph it into something else, then they're going to have a hard time recovering from that. And I know it sounds a little mean, but you can't feel bad for decks like that.
No, not really. I mean, most of my decks are all built around the commander and the commander doing busted stuff. Now, I know I played Tulane last night in 2 games. The first one, I got severely messed up by one of the other players who, it wasn't even his turn, and he cracked a Ranger Captain of Eos so that we couldn't cast non-creature spells. So then that player whose player's turn it was decided that he was like, all right, well, I'll just win the game here instead. And I went, oh, I have a T-Pro in hand. I could have T-Pro, but I can't T-Pro now. I'm like, damn. So I mean, that's kind of really it. I do build, decks that want the commander around. And if you can figure out a way to silence the commander and turn it into something else, I mean, you can turn it into literally any artifact you have on the field. I mean, Paul said a mana rock, but just don't give him anything that sacrifices itself, like a Mind's Eye or no, not Mind's Eye, sorry, Mind Stone or Commander Sphere, because they'll just get rid of it straight away.
Right, and honestly, like, you could even, if I was playing this in a deck, I would play Darksteel Citadel in that deck just for the ability to make it into, like, any creature that I wanted, basically.
That's gross. I love it, but that's gross. So yeah, Wizards definitely do more silence effects. Even leave them at 6/6 mana. I think 6 mana is fine for where this is. Because if you're going to have that much hate on a card, then at least leave it at a decently high mana value. All right, next we're going to get into another white card, Paul. There's a lot of white cards on this list. And this is actually one that I personally play that I haven't had a chance to resolve yet. It is Moonblast Cleric. It is 2 and a white for a 2/3 human elf cleric with divine intervention. It says when Moonblast Cleric enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an enchantment card, reveal it, then shuffle and put that card on top.
It's not very often that we just get straight up tutors on creatures. And honestly, I would say this is maybe one of the first ones that we've ever had. It's just non-conditional. You just get an enchantment from your deck and you put it on top. No biggie. Enlightened Tutor is like $30, $40, something like that, I think, right now. Maybe even more than that. Can't really remember. And this card is 35 cents. And it is mostly the same effect for all the intents and purposes that you want to be playing Enlightened Tutor for. Yes, it's 2 more mana, but it also comes with a 3/2 body. And honestly, if you're using this for like a Voltron style deck, it gives you another body to put auras on. Or if you're just using it to get a value enchantment, then you don't really care about spending 2 extra mana. As long as you just care about getting that enchantment, And I feel like this card may or may not be one of the most important / impactful white cards that they have printed in quite some time. They've printed a lot of good white cards lately. I'm pretty sure that this is top 5 for me.
Yeah, I have to agree with you currently. Do we call the reprint of Idyllic Tutor in Theros Beyond Death one of those cards as well? Because I mean, this is, pretty much if you melded Idyllic Tutor and Enlightened Tutor together and put it on a creature, that's what you get with Moonblast Cleric.
Right, and I would argue that because it was a reprint, Idyllic Tutor is like, it already existed, people already knew about it. It dropped the price, which is awesome. But as far as new cards that they've printed, and thank you for bringing that up because I should have clarified, new cards that they've printed, I'm pretty sure that this is top 5 for me.
Yeah, new cards they've printed, definitely. That's why I wanted to clarify, because there have been some pretty nice white cards that have been reprinted recently as well. Like Swords to Plowshare and Path to Exile. So, I mean, that's why I wanted to make sure. But out of new cards, like Moonblast Cleric is fantastic. And again, this is another one that I play in Tulane because I can go and get a Lurin with it or Mana Breach or something else that I need to, win the game in that deck, which I need to start doing more often because I have started to durdle with Tulane and I just let people walk all over me. And that's not the way that the deck is supposed to run. But I just love playing it. So I'm like, I don't care if I win or lose at the moment. I'm just happy to play Tulane because otherwise people, kind of get mad at me. But anyway, enough about my decks. Let's move on to the next one here, Paul. We have a very interesting card that I honestly thought was going to see a lot more play considering what it does and the colors that it's in as well. And that is Zorn. So it is 2 and a red for a 3/2 elemental that says if you would create 1 or more treasure tokens, instead create those tokens plus an additional treasure token.
I think the obvious card to compare this to is Goldspan Dragon. Goldspan Dragon obviously is quite a bit different from Zorn, but the main functionality of the cards are similar in that they both, quote, double, end quote, your treasures. Obviously, Goldspan Dragon is a flying, hasty 4/4, I think, that makes a treasure when it attacks. But Zorn is like not that far away from the double mana aspect of that. In that every time you make a treasure, you get to make an additional treasure token. Obviously, this is pretty good with like Prosper and, basically anything that creates treasures. But having extra treasures can sometimes be better than having a treasure that taps for double, because there are various uses for having artifacts on the battlefield. Like, obviously, you can't play Zorn in Old Gnawbone, but in James's Old Gnawbone deck, if he was making extra treasures, that would be 5 life each time he makes an extra one for Fangren Marauder, whatever his name is.
Yeah. Love that card, by the way. That is that is a hidden gem, if I do say so myself.
If you're playing like an artifact-centric deck, Zorn, if you get 2 treasures, you can like trash for treasure one of them, but use mana from the other treasure to pay for it. So sometimes having the extra artifact is actually more impactful than having just an extra mana on each one. And yes, I understand that Goldspan Dragon is a very good card, but the Goldspan Dragon is almost $50. Zorn is under 3. So you take your pick there.
Yeah, and has really cool D&D sketchbook artwork, and that's what I'm here for. I'm here for the showcase artworks, Paul. Always have been, always will be. Ever since they brought them out in Throne of Eldraine, I've been a fan of like some of the variations of like the showcase. Yeah, I mean, Zorn's just good. Like, I'm actually looking at retooling Calamax to being a Storm deck. Don't worry, I'm keeping it intact for the podcast. But I'm looking at retooling my version of Calamax into a Storm deck, and this is one of the cards that I wanted to add. So like Stormkiln Artist, Emeritus. So Archmage Emeritus is going in there. Zorn's going to go in there as well, because I mean, I'm going to make a treasure off Stormkiln Artist, which Zorn will then give me a second one, and then I can just keep going. And if I have your commander, what's that one? Veyron, Voice of Duality on there, I get 4 treasures. I have ways to make...
You would get 3.
I'd get 3, sorry. But I have ways of also making like clones in the deck as well. So like Wall of Stolen Identities is in the deck, Spark Doubles in the deck, so I can just make more of, copies of them and get 1 extra treasure. So yeah, I mean,
I'm wrong, you get 4.
I would get 4.
Yeah,
because there's individual triggers.
Yeah.
So but yeah, I mean, that is actually a really good point to bring up too. As like tokens, that doubles them completely, no matter how many come in at one time. But if you dockside with this on the field, and say dockside is equals 5, you wouldn't get 10 treasures. You'd only get 6 treasures, because this says 1 or more.
Yeah, and that's an important distinction. They try to stay away from the general doublers these days. Vorinclex was like a little bit of a whoopsie, I think, back in what was it, Kaldheim? Yeah, Kaldheim.
Yeah, that wasn't even that long ago. That was like 3 months
ago.
January. Okay, yeah. So let's say 7 months ago. That wasn't even that long ago, but it feels like it was forever. Anyway, let's pass through our combat phase here, Paul. We're gonna swing out with whatever we have on the field. Maybe it's just a Voltron creature. Maybe it's a full board state that you're about to Crater Hoof Behemoth and kill the rest of the table. But anyway,
I'll block with my Flumph.
I will draw a card, and you will draw a card. And with that, let's go and hear a message from our sponsors right now. Welcome back from that ad break. Let's pass through our combat phase now and go to our main phase 2. This is where we're going to talk about more of the cards that came out in the commander decks that were associated with AFR. So we have one card here that is actually still from the main set, so I was a bit of a liar there. But the first card we're going to talk about here in the second half of this episode is Grazilak's Illithid Scholar. It is 1 and 2 blue for a 3/2 horror that says whenever a creature you control becomes blocked, you may return it to its owner's hand. Whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, draw a card.
This is perhaps, I would say, one of my favorite cards from the set. I think it's being either misunderstood or just very much not appreciated enough. It's just a 3-mana 3/2. Sure. But the fact that if a creature you control is blocked, you can just bounce it back to your hand means that you can attack with relative impunity. If you have any ETB abilities, like maybe that Moonblast Cleric from before, maybe it's like an Eternal Witness or something, then people don't really want to block because they don't want you to do that again, because those are pretty powerful effects. But at the same time, if they don't block, you just get to draw a card anyway. So it puts your opponents in this weird like lose-lose position where if they block, you just get to have another ETB. And if they don't block, then you just get to draw a card anyway. And it's kind of a sick advantage engine when you think about it, because you could just stack this deck full of ETBs. And even if Grazilax himself is blocked, his ability still triggers. You can bounce it to your hand. So it's kind of a crazy card advantage when you think about it. And honestly, the reason why I paused there is because what I just described sounded gross in my own head, and I didn't really think about it that way.
I was just thinking, this is blue. You know what goes really well with ETBs and blue is
Stop.
Sultai. You know what? You know who's Sultai?
Stop.
Yarok?
Yeah, Grazilex probably pretty good in a Yarok deck, honestly.
I still have a Yarok hanging around that I've wanted to build since M20 came out, and I still want to build a decent Sultai deck that isn't Muldrotha, but I want to put Muldrotha in it. So maybe, just maybe, Paul, we can put a Yarok deck together for me, and that's what I'll sleeve up in the sleeves that Ross gave us.
That sounds good to me.
It sounds fantastic.
You put Grazilax in there?
Hell yeah, I'm gonna put Grazilax in there.
Grazilax the illest?
Yeah, the illest scholar of all. Look at them tentacles wrapping around that man's skull. If you're on YouTube, you'll see it. The card will be on screen. If you're on the audio only, go check out the YouTube video and you can see it. Or just go look at the card on Scryfall. Grazilax, fantastic card. Let's move on now to the next one, Paul. We are going to talk about a land, and I mean, we don't really talk about lands when we talk about like underrated cards, because usually lands are pretty well, like, you know, okay. I mean, everyone needs to play lands to play Magic, but maybe we should do like an underrated lands base episode one day. Anyway, rifting aside, we're going to talk about Underdark Rift. See what I did there? Yeah, cool. It's a land that taps for colorless, or it has an activated ability of 5 and tap to exile Underdark Rift. Roll a d10. Put target artifact, creature, or planeswalker into its owner's library just beneath the top X cards of that library, where X is the result. Activate only as a sorcery.
This card, honestly, might be... If Moonblast Cleric was top 5 for me, Underdark Rift is probably top 3 for me, maybe even top 2. This is, as expensive as it is for a land, 5 mana, well, technically 6 as you tap it and get rid of it. This is removal for 3 very relevant permanent types, artifact, creatures, and planeswalkers. It's colorless, so it gets around protection from colors. And it actually tucks the whatever the permanent you're targeting is pretty far down potentially. Like at worst, you put it on under the very top card of their deck. At best, it is the 11th card in their deck if you roll a 10 on that D10. And on average, you're putting this thing 5 cards deep. 6 cards deep, technically, because it'll be the 6th card. So, honestly, because lands are so difficult to interact with, you know, most people don't run targeted land destruction. This thing will often represent a huge threat, especially for Voltron commanders. Like, let's say James was playing Gallia, and he had every sword in the game on Gallia. Sort of blah, blah, literally all, like, what are there, 9 of them now?
Yeah, something like that.
All 9 of them. I could still use the Underdark Rift to put it in his library. Like, the ramifications of this card are pretty much endless. It gets rid of Animar. It gets rid of... what's another protection? I don't know. Like, Blood Baron of Viscopa, because people definitely play that card.
I took a second and I'm like, I don't even know what that card is.
It's protection from black and white. It's a 4/4 if an opponent has like 10 or less life. He gets +4/+4 in flying or something. I don't know. Old standard card from Return to Ravnica. Anyway, Underdark Rift, removal on a land, very unique, very good, and the fact that it tucks instead of actually killing it is also very good, especially against like Taste decks or whatever.
Hey, just hating on my Taste decks, why don't you? I mean, it also gets rid of Eldrazi's too, because they don't have protection from lands, and they are mostly indestructible. So this is exiles. Oh no, this tucks it, so it's not even an exile effect. It literally just picks it up and puts it back in the library and says you can cast that later. And if someone's if someone doesn't have the mana to cast it again, and they use like perpetual mana, which I guess is like what treasures would be, because you get them for a little bit and then they go, and you get like 1 turn or 2 turns where it's just boom, that's what I want to do. Yeah, I mean, why not? You're just going to make that Eldrazi sit in their hand for longer than what they probably wanted it to. This, actually thinking about it, also gets rid of Kozilek, the Great Distortion, because you can go to tuck it instead of, and it can't be countered either with Kozilek's ability. So you could go to tuck it, and then they obviously get to replace that tuck with the exile effect instead, which then puts it in the command zone, which is totally fine with me. But at least you've got it out of, like, you've got an off play for at least one turn.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Paul, let's get into the next card here. And this one has to be like one of your top, like if everything else was top 5, this is like top 2. I can feel it. I can feel that you're going to say something super positive about this card, because I, again, don't know why. I don't think people know about this card as much as we did, or as much as you did, because I didn't know about this card until I actually, read through the script, and that is Feystache. So it is 2 and 2 white for a 4/4 elk. This is whenever Feystache attacks, another target attacking creature you control gains indestructible till end of turn. Whenever a creature or planeswalker you control becomes a target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, you may draw a card.
There's a lot to unpack here, so to speak. First of all, for commanders like Girid, this card is great because, as I mentioned earlier, there are commanders, Girid being a very notable one, that want to attack. They can't really function unless they attack. And Feystache basically lets you do that with impunity. You give Girid indestructible, and it doesn't matter where the heck he's going, what the heck he's blocked with. He attacked. That's all that you care about. He doesn't have to connect, doesn't have to do anything, just has to live. And Feystache lets you make sure that happens. Now, the Feystache itself is not indestructible, which is unfortunate, but it is a 4-mana 4/4. If you're playing this on curve, chances of people having something to block with that would kill this are actually surprisingly low, because people like to play the big flashy stuff. So chances of this dying that early on are, I would say, pretty slim. Now, the biggest deal about this card is this second line of text here, which says, whenever a creature or planeswalker you control becomes the target of a spell or an ability an opponent controls, you may draw a card. There is another very notable card that has a variation of this ability called Leovold, Emissary of Trest, who is currently banned. And whenever you or a permanent you control becomes targeted, you get to draw a card, I believe is how that one's worded, which is obviously a good deal stronger. But this is a white card, mono white, bear in mind, which means that this is like some of the most non-conditional card draw that we can find in this color. If the Feystache itself gets targeted, that still counts. You get to draw a card, so at worst, it replaced itself. If somebody goes to target your commander, you get to draw a card. If somebody targets multiple things, you draw a card for each one, because it's based on the instance of the creature being targeted. Feystache, honestly, is just like one of the best cards in the commander set. For Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. It's a very powerful card, especially for white, and I fully expect that once people notice how good it is, it will take off.
You could say it would ride into legend.
All right, buddy.
As its flavor text would assume. All right, let's move on to the next one here, and this one's really cool, man. I like this one. As soon as I read it, I went, "Ooh, that's gonna go in a Scarab God deck," and that's Wand of Orcus. So it's 2 and a black for a legendary artifact equipment that says whenever a equipped creature attacks or blocks, it and zombies you control gain Death Touch until end of turn. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, create that many 2/2 black zombie creature tokens and has equip 3.
There are some unique things that you can do with Wand of Orcus, but interpreting it at face value, we don't get that many good equipments anymore. To be quite honest, like we just got the swords, a couple more swords in Modern Horizons 2, but things like that don't come around very often. And Wand of Orcus, I would say, despite having a rather steep total cost, which means to cast it and equip it, it giving the thing that it's attacking Death Touch, as well as other zombies you control if you happen to have any, and making it basically a Grave Titan. Well, actually, the whole equipment basically makes it a Grave Titan, because Grave Titan is Death Touch, lol. Is like, that's a pretty good equipment, because either they trade a creature for it, maybe they chump block or something, which sucks, but if they don't have a chump blocker, then they have to trade a creature for it. Or you get to make I don't know, let's say on average about 4 zombies at this point, because most creatures will be about 4 by the time you equip this. That's kind of nuts. And they come in untapped as well, so you get to make 4 blockers, so to speak, and then your commander got to attack or whatever creature it is, and you can't get killed on the crackback, which is one of the biggest fears when you go all out with something like that.
Yeah, it pretty much like replaces it. So if you swing in with, 5 2/2 zombies, like you've already got some zombies and like your commander, let's say your commander is a 4/4 and some zombies and 5 zombies, you're going to make what? 10, more than that? 14 zombies? You're going to make 14 blockers and then be able to untap with those next turn and do it again.
Not to mention that if you have enough mana to re-equip this to one of those zombies afterward, then when that zombie blocks, your zombies will all gain death touch for that combat.
Wow, I didn't even think of that until just then. That's nuts.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it even more. All right then. I need to find a mono black deck or a black deck that I put this card in and play it more often, because that's some spicy tech that I want to surprise people with.
Another cute thing you could do with Wand of Orcus, if anybody out there actually wanted to make this work, is if you're in like black and white, which there's obviously a multitude of ways that you could do that. You could play there's a card that gives all your creatures exalted in white. I can't remember the name of it.
I don't know the card this time, Paul.
I want to say it's like Archangel of something. It's not Archangel of Thune, I know that for sure.
No, because that's a ++1 counter whenever you gain life, right?
Yeah. I'm not gonna spend too much time looking for it. Oh, Sublime Archangel. There you go.
Found it.
Sublime Archangel. It's a flying exalted 4/3 for 4, and it gives your other creatures that you control exalted, which means that it gives all the zombies you make exalted, which means that every time that creature attacks alone, you get to make more and more and more zombies that each have exalted, and so on and so forth. So if that's something that you want to try to go for, that's kind of cute. Take a picture of it and send it to us.
Or, I mean, if you still want to stay in that black and white theme, you could Cathar's Crusade.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one.
Yeah. Go and check out episode 4 of this podcast. Check out the Taste of Karlov deck and put this in Taste of Karlov. Yeah, we only have one more card to talk about, Paul, before we get out of here for the week. It's been really quick and really sweet. But let's get into the last one here, shall we? It is another white card, Paul. Do you just think that like no one plays enough white?
I just think that people often talk about how bad white cards are, or like how much card draw they lack, but there's literally 4 amazing white cards on here, 3 of which are card advantage. So I want to highlight cards that people may have overlooked.
I mean, this card is Thorough Investigation. It is 2 and a white for an enchantment that says whenever you attack, investigate, which means you create a colorless clue artifact artifact token with an activated ability of 2 generic mana, sack it, and draw a card. Whenever you sacrifice a clue, you venture into the dungeon. So you either enter the first room of a dungeon or you advance to the next room.
This is my actual number 1 pick. Definitely for white cards, maybe for every card in the commander set. It is just straight up card advantage. It rewards white for doing what it does best, which is attacking. So whenever you attack, you get to make this clue. And then whenever you sacrifice that clue, you get to venture into the dungeon. So it's actually card advantage kind of in 2 ways. So you get to draw a card, but also there are a few dungeon rooms that say scry 1, scry 2, scry 3, draw 3 cards, then you can cast 3, for free. There's ones that like drain people. There's rooms that make tokens. There's rooms that shrink creatures. This is one of the most versatile white cards they've ever printed. And I honestly have not seen anybody talk about this card. Not one person. I saw maybe one person talk about how bad it was one time. And I was like, that don't set well with me. Nuh-uh.
If it's one thing Paul doesn't like, it's people bashing on white cards that are actually really good.
Yeah, this card is a house. And honestly, like I said, my pick for best white card in the set, possibly best card in the set, period.
Yeah, I can't get over Moonblast Cleric, honestly, but I mean, for many, many different reasons. All right, so that's it. That is our top 10 picks for cards from AFC and the Adventures in the Forgotten Realms main set that we just think they need a little bit more love. Tell us what you think, and you can do that on Instagram or on Twitter at CMDR@arms. Don't forget to go and check out our YouTube channel. You can do that at youtube.com/commanderatarms. Check out the channel. We do deck techs, unboxings. This podcast goes up there. And if you're watching this, don't forget to like the video, hit subscribe, leave a comment for the algorithm. And I think that's it. But definitely do all of those 3 things. If you want to get any of these cards or any sealed products or any singles while buying online and supporting your local game stores and getting them shipped to your house, you can do that through our TCG affiliate link, tcgplayer.com/commanderatarms. We have our merch shirt that's going to be in the show notes below as well. It is a super comfortable Bella canvas. It says Commander at Arms across the chest. I love mine. I wear it every time I record a video. Go and check that one out as well. If you want to become a direct supporter of the show, you can do that at patreon.com/commanderatarms. All of our patrons get a shout out on their first time that they sub to us there. And you get access to the Discord with added little extra feature bonuses and everything else. And go and check that out. With that, Paul, do you have anything else you wanted to say?
Of course. First of all, I want to thank each and every one of you for listening, even if this is the first and last episode you ever have or ever will listen to. It means a lot to me and James that you did take the time to sit down and do so, or maybe you're in your car on the way to work. Either way, it really means a lot to us that you enjoy hearing our voice enough to keep listening. If you did like what you heard, please feel free to share our name around in your friend groups, in your play group. Just get our name out there. The more people that listen to us, the better. Not just for, like Patreon or whatever, but just to have more people to interact with, because interaction is kind of what makes this community one of the best parts of Magic, is that gathering aspect. Also, if you're not already in the Discord, please feel free to join in. We'd really like some more active people on there just to get some more games going. And other than that, just thank you for tuning in. It means a lot.
And with that, I'm James.
And I'm Paul.
And you've been listening to the newest episode of the Commander at Arms podcast.
Peace.
See ya.